Do you ever feel like you're doing everything right, reading the books, listening to the podcasts, pushing for growth? Sometimes discomfort might show up and you'll find yourself wrestling with demons that don't seem to go away. Well, you're not broken, you're just working against your nervous system and not with it. Today we are looking at what's going on whenever you get fighty or flaky, when you spiral out of control or perhaps just freeze up. It isn't all about mindset, and you can't always outthink every problem. Sometimes it's your biology, your nervous system. It has been trained to avoid discomfort, like it's a house on fire, and sometimes your nervous system can be a little overtrained for avoiding certain circumstances, and it can perhaps let us down. After all, it wasn't built to help you succeed as much as it is optimized to help you survive. So welcome to the Growth Mindset Psychology podcast, where we explore the science behind self-improvement and usually add some philosophy to help simply enjoy your life. I am Sam Webster Harris, blending science, stories, and self-inquiry to unpack the hidden forces that shape how we think, feel, and change. A big issue with self-help is that we get the impression that we can always do more, be more, grow more, which gives us the impression we should perhaps be someone else entirely. And not only is that unhelpful, it's also never going to happen. Real growth, we'll find, is actually about meeting yourself where you are, noticing small little improvements that you might be able to focus on one moment at a time as different fears come up. Because when we spend time to recognize what our fears are and stop running from them, we realize that it's often a very helpful thing that's trying to lead us to the places we need to go. So to help explore this topic of nervous system mastery, I am joined by Esin Pinarli, a therapist and nervous system expert who is sharing a ton of research to expand our capacity for life, not by hacking our way through fear, but by building internal strength, grace, and proverbially expanding our window of tolerance as opposed to just smashing windows left, right, and center and leaving us with a big draft. It's a really fun, geeky deep dive of an episode, and I found the conversation absolutely fascinating. If you enjoyed any of our episodes on fear, attachment theory, polyvagal theory, and ever wanted to know more, you will love this episode. It might even rewire the way you think about progress. All coming up after the break. Okay, so we have Esin Pinarli on the show to give us a masterclass in working with our nervous system instead of having it work against us. Welcome, Esin. We will frame this conversation by first exploring what growth mindset really means to you, and then how this gets into your work with the nervous system and personal growth. So let's launch off with how you understand what a growth mindset is.
Well, you go between growth mindset and fixed mindset, right? And so for me, a growth mindset is staying open-minded and basically pushing through discomfort. Something that makes me uncomfortable is an opportunity for growth for me. So if it's creating any kind of fear or discomfort or cringe inside of me, I need to explore that. I need to get curious about that. Why is that making me so uncomfortable? And so by doing the difficult thing, I feel that I come out on the other side more empowered, that the fear of fear is larger than the fear itself.
I really like that. I wonder how you arrived at that, because teaching people to be curious then it's not the easiest thing to teach, but it is the best part of it. I find of when you realize that everything's feeling like it's uncertain and going wrong, that you're like, okay, actually this is where the good things are happening.
It's where the magic happens, right? But it doesn't feel like it because it feels so uncomfortable and we want to avoid and we want to run away and it feels too difficult. Growth is outside of your comfort zone. Psychology 101, what we heard back in the day. And taking that a step further to go very neuroscience backed is that when you do difficult things for you, whoever you are, there's a part in the left side of your brain. It's called the anterior mid-cingulate cortex. It's basically nerd speak for saying it's your seat of willpower. That part is largest in athletes, people who push themselves to go beyond what's comfortable and to challenge themselves continuously. Asking somebody out on a date and being fearful, running a marathon, starting your own podcast, and you start to get fear When you push through that fear, despite feeling it, that part becomes denser and it becomes bigger. And the larger your anterior mid-cingulate cortex, which is like right behind the left side of your brain, the longer you live. And so everybody has a window of tolerance. Oh, I've reached my capacity. That's way too uncomfortable. So if you keep challenging yourself, just being on the edge of like, this is really uncomfortable, but I'm going to push because it's going to make me stronger and it's going to increase that anterior mid-cingulate cortex, which is going to give me more willpower and I'm going to live longer. I'm going to become more resilient. And then that means that another uncomfortable thing, I'm going to have more space for it in my nervous system to be able to handle it.
Yes. I love the way of looking at that and realizing that you can build other things like it. Because I definitely feel whenever I'm doing something hard, it's like, oh, actually, if I get better at doing the hard thing, all things will slightly easier, same as lifting heavy things, make it easier to lift heavy things.
That's like absolutely the best way. It doesn't feel like it in the moment, right? So to tell people, push yourself past your comfort zone, it's like you're doing it for more nervous system regulation. You may get a little more dysregulated initially, but the reason we're doing it is to increase your window of tolerance for the vast array of human emotions that we feel. So we can actually tolerate more difficult things. And that part, so I like a lot of people are very like left brain. And when I say left brain, intellectual, pragmatic, protocol oriented, they want to know the science behind it. Why am I doing this thing? Why am I making myself so uncomfortable? How is that making me grow? How is that benefiting me? Well, you're going to live longer. It's increasing your seat of willpower, and you're going to be able to handle more difficult things that are going to come your way. You're going to become more resilient.
Okay, I'll talk about one thing that I found a really good hack, if you will, but I don't like the concept of hacks. But I found I could do skill breaks. I called them, of just doing something for 10 minutes, which is long enough to get through the barrier. Let's say I'm learning to juggle. You pick up some balls, you drop them for like a minute and you go, oh, okay, I can't juggle, and you stop. If you just make yourself do 10 minutes a day, it's like, okay, I'm going to drop balls for 10 minutes a day, which is hard, but it's not as hard as doing it for an hour, and you don't get any benefit doing it for an hour anyway. But if you do it every day, after a month, you can juggle. I just found doing that with lots of different little things was such a good way to get me over the hump of starting stuff and realizing that you build stuff in your brain at night. I just wonder what other things you've had that help people nudge their window of tolerance just a little bit bigger from that, like, okay, well, I'm just going to give up because I can't catch any of these balls after 1 minute, to make them slightly expand.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and again, it's so nuanced, right? It's not a one size fits all, right? So I could tell somebody, here are these evidence-based hacks or modalities that are going to help you to deal with something difficult and to push through the fear. So but if it doesn't work for that person and it doesn't resonate for that person, it won't work. But what you're talking about is titration. And so that's like, I'm slowly titrating a difficult thing. I'm doing it for 10 minutes, then I'm taking a break. So your brain knows I'm not going to keep doing this. And then it feels intolerable. And then your brain gets overwhelmed and you don't want to do it. That's how I got into jogging. I was like, you're only going to go out there and you're going to jog for 5 minutes. Then you're going to jog for 10 minutes. If you jog more than that, that's great. And you end up wanting to do more because you're not putting the pressure onto your brain to say, I have to do this. I have to push through the discomfort. So you're going more with grace than you are with forcing. So you never really want to force it. So I guess the best example I could give, this is the metaphor I use. You're on an island, right? And on that island, your comfort level is to be under the coconut tree. You don't really want to be around all the people. You don't want to go on the water. And there's a bunch of islands around. So what I say is walk over to the dock and then come back underneath the coconut tree, and then walk over to the dock and then come back underneath the coconut tree. That's all I'm asking you to do. And that's metaphorical, right? Like your comfort level is being underneath the coconut tree. You don't necessarily, let's say, want to be with all the people. You want to relax. And I want you to go in the water, right? I want you to enjoy the water. And then I eventually want you to start to travel to the other islands that are around by boat. But you need to titrate your nervous system. So then I eventually get the dock to be your new comfort. And then when you're at the dock, I say, tip your toe in the water and then come back to the dock. And then tip your toe in the water and then come back into the dock. So what you're talking about is titration, right? Slowly getting your nervous system. If you do too much and you override your nervous system, where you take on these big, big tasks, you can go into dorsal, which is shut down. And so then your window of tolerance for your nervous system actually starts to decrease. You become very, that was really tough. But if you titrate it like that, then after I have you dip your toe in the water, and that's metaphorical for doing the difficult thing, whatever it may be for you, then I'm going to ask you to swim a little bit. And then after you swim, I'm going to have you go to the shore, then swim a little bit, and then come to the shore. Eventually, I'm going to want you to hop on a boat and visit the other islands and interact with the people. But I started you under the coconut tree, and all I asked is for you to slowly, through titration, just go to the dock. If you override your nervous system's capacity, if you try to go and do something, your nervous system is going to see it as a threat. It's going to say, this is not familiar. I've never done this before. And your nervous system always wants familiar. And even if it's bad for you, and so anything that's not familiar to your nervous system, and everyone's is unique. We have this internal database. In a millisecond, it just happens in a millisecond. We search, is this safe or not safe? Have I had this experience before or not? And if you have, it's deemed safe to your nervous system, and then you proceed. So familiarity is safety to your nervous system. So titration, like what you're talking about, is slowly introducing that to your nervous system so that it can mitigate the threat.
Interesting. I really liked all of that. And I'm not going to go through everything. But one thing that came up at the end of it was looking into borderline in the concept of sometimes they have the conflicting fear of intimacy and the fear of abandonment at the same time. And then what you were just talking about, like fear of uncertainty and doing new things. I feel like so I have ADHD. I have a fear of familiarity with a conflicting fear of uncertainty in that I always want to do new things. But whenever I do the new thing, I have no idea what I'm doing and I don't plan it and I don't actually do the thing because I don't know what I'm doing. And it's like,
But that's actually your superpower. You know, it's like, I always say ADHD and ADD, there's this very creative, it's this ability, there's a lot of side questing going on, right? We start getting into this and then we side quest, but what you're talking about is both end. People are like, that's such a paradox. How could I both have this desire for experiencing something new and then the fear of the uncertainty at the same time? You can. And that's the beauty of it. Have that uncertainty and not know what you're doing and sort of enjoy the journey of, I'm learning something new. I don't have an agenda. I get to tap into my creative. I don't really know what's going to come about. This is kind of exciting. Remember, excitement and anxiety and fear are very close.
Definitely. I think a lot of these things is always learning the slight things that hold you back and getting things to pair together very well. So I'm actually writing a script all about conflicting personality traits or skills that pair really well together. Like the classic Steve Jobs was a massively creative thinker, but super analytical. Every single detail he'd know about. And I think there's just so many things like that in life that are useful to work out how to do well, like time sensitivity so you don't waste time on stupid stuff, but like time and sensitivity when you're calling your mum or hanging out with your friends and being completely in the moment. It's sort of, you want to be as opposite as possible and nothing in between.
Yeah, right. Or allowing both I call it the duality, allowing that duality to exist and being okay with it. The minute we start judging it and we're like, why do I have these conflicting ideologies? Because you have different parts. There's this part of me that wants to wake up and have a green juice and jog. And there's other part of me that wants to sleep in, and so that's normal. There's this part of me that really wants to push through challenges and grow and learn and push through discomfort. And there's another part of me that wants to stay comfortable and just not do that. And so the best thing, I think, when it comes to having that is allowing the duality to exist and being present with it and not judging it. Look how interesting look at what a multifaceted individual I am. People have body parts, right? What makes us think that internally we don't have an internal ecosystem of different parts that are constantly communicating with one another, right? Part of us that is fearful. There's a part of us that's intrinsically, inherently really healthy. And there's a part of us that has these reservoirs of wisdom and healing. There's a part of us that has some shame, that holds some shame. There's a part of us that's really confident. There's a part of us that wants to take risks. It's really this sort of allowing all of these parts to be there and not judging them and being compassionate and curious and allowing them to exist and kind of going with it. Oh, that's so interesting that I have sort of this fear of intimacy. And this is a common thing. Like you said, fear of intimacy and fear of abandonment at the same time. So you have to challenge and titrate learning how to be close to somebody, understanding that fear of abandonment is so universal. Attachment styles are such a huge thing right now, but really, even people who are a secure attachment, they have some fear of abandonment. No one is confident 100% of the day, 100% of the time. We're always in what I call a mixed physiological state. Like our nervous system is always kind of in flux. We're not always the same. We don't always feel the same. Understanding that you can have fear of intimacy and fear of abandonment. Well, then what do I do with that? How do you challenge your fear of intimacy? You lean in more. You do little things that allow you to be closer to somebody, right? So co-regulation, somebody else's nervous system, relaxing your nervous system, or you being in connection with another person who makes you feel like everything is going to be okay. So connection and social engagement, little by little, help with that fear of intimacy. But you can't go into, if you have fear of intimacy and fear of abandonment, a lot of fearful avoidant attachments have that, right? So they get a little bit close and they pull away, and then the partner, the person, the colleague, whoever they're in relationship with is like, I'm going to match that energy. You're pulling away from me. I'm going to pull away. And then the fear of abandonment kicks in. And then it's like, oh, no, don't go. I kind of like that. I kind of liked the togetherness. I liked the connection. Don't go. And the other person's kind of like, well, you kind of rejected my bid for connection, or you couldn't stay there with me in the closeness. But it's that risking the togetherness little by little and allowing it to be there and being with that. The more you are with the discomfort, it starts to dissipate. If you run away from the discomfort, whatever you resist persists. Like, oh my God, oh, this is so uncomfortable. I don't want to feel this. I got to distract. I'm going to distract myself. I'm going to numb myself. I'm going to work more. I'm going to go do something instead of slowly allowing your body to feel that discomfort and that duality and feel that discomfort, and then it can dissipate. Because if you can be with that feeling, it starts to become a lot less scary than avoiding that feeling. Because when you avoid it, it grows. Because you're not having any exposure. And in vivo, right? In vivo means in real life exposure. I have to consistently expose myself to the stimulus, whatever that is, over and over again through repetition. Slowly, though. You're challenging somebody with a fear of intimacy and a fear of abandonment, and you're telling them to dive into the deep end. That's terrifying. I always say, if you get hysterical, which means you feel overwhelmed, it's usually historical, which means it's coming from a younger part of you. If you feel hysterical, nervous, anxious, overwhelmed, it's usually historical. It's a sensation that's living in your body that's usually coming from a younger experience that you had. It's stored energy into your body. And so this feeling that you're feeling of activation or awakening, people call it triggered, or the fear, like when else have you felt like this scared before? You don't have to say, oh, when I was 5 years old, I started to say something and my dad told me to shut up and I learned to just shut down. I'm not taken seriously and I'm meant to be seen and not heard. So it's difficult for me to speak my truth. It's a historical thing. Your body holds on to that as a sensation. A big part of the work that I do, and when you talk about growth mindset, is how do we discharge that energy that your body is still holding on to?
Yeah, how do you discharge that energy? Great question.
So there's this thing called tremor induction, which is really amazing. You want to move the energy out of your body. I'm sure you've seen a lot of somatic release. That's why we want to move our body, because when we move our body and we do things like yoga or working out, whatever it is that you like to do, it's like wringing out a mop. You are essentially moving that energy that's stored in your body, that fearful energy, out of your body. It's a somatic release. Tremor induction, it's so hard without visually saying it, but you basically put your legs into a diamond position, lay on a floor, and then you elevate your bum up to the point where you start to shake a little. Then you come back down into that V position, and then you bring your knees in. You will feel it start to literally tremor. And that's a release. But we are not trying to release it through to completion. So the higher the activation, which means in that moment how activated you are, the less amount of time you do that. You're installing new resources into the hardware of your own system. I'm going to use tremor induction to release some stored energy in my body. So it's that diamond shape. You hold it, you'll feel the tremoring, you'll feel yourself shaking, and then you bring your leg straight out. And you're laying flat on the ground during this. So the higher the activation, the less amount of time you do it, and you don't go over 2 minutes.
Okay, cool. Definitely going to watch a video on that. Yeah, I do feel at least half the episodes I somehow come back to it. By the way, exercise is the best thing ever. Always.
Exercise is the most underutilized antidepressant, number one. And number two, it creates hope molecules. But we want to add in like the tremor induction. A lot of people don't know what that is. The best thing I could say is, if you think about the animal kingdom, there's predators and prey in the animal kingdom. Let's say there's a gazelle and an impala, and these impalas are playing with each other. They're having a good time. They notice that the gazelle's about to approach, and the gazelle's going to attack, as a metaphor for human beings, what we find as a threat, right? Fear of intimacy is a threat, whatever is a threat. So this impala is going to get attacked. The gazelle starts going after the impala. The impala, after a certain period of time, when it feels like it's defeated, it rolls over and plays dead. It immobilizes itself, shuts down. It thinks that the gazelle will be like, oh, I don't have to physically attack you. I'm going to drag you to my lair and show all my friends that I just got us food. And in the minute when that impala is brought to the gazelle's den, and he's talking to all his friends about, look at the meal I brought, he gets up and runs away, goes from immobilization to mobilization, which means from a freeze response, we all freeze when we get scared, right? He goes from freeze to flight. He gets out of there. Then he goes back to his friends, and you would think he would be like, oh my God, I just almost died. I just almost got eaten. Instead, he shakes it off. And he doesn't get PTSD. Animals naturally do tremor induction. They release it, and then they don't get PTSD.
Nice. One annoying point is you said gazelle and impala, which are very similar animals. I think you maybe meant like cheetah or something as the predator.
Maybe I could have. I definitely mess up with the euphemisms a lot of those times.
It was a great euphemism otherwise. Just
switch it into that. Yeah.
The specifics. I watched a lot of nature documentaries.
No, thank you for correcting me, because I'm the queen of euphemisms gone wrong.
Nice. Definitely liking. So I have spoken a lot about how to go through life more gracefully, which was the term you mentioned. And I'm always hot on anything that helps you do that. One analogy I use was like surfing. You're pretty safe when you're just sitting on your surfboard, but the minute you try to catch a wave, it's chaos. And if you just jump off straight away, you're never going to learn to surf. It's the hard, horrible bit. There's the bit you have to like go, oh, I'm doing it, and carry on trying to do it. Whereas you just always fall off when you start, but you have to learn to try and stay. And so start with baby waves and very gently. But when you realize that it's the hard thing that is actually the very thing you're there. So certainly for my ADHD, I'm like, okay, I'm having resistance to doing my task. That's probably because I'm doing the actual task I'm supposed to be doing. Whereas if I'm not having resistance, I'm probably not doing the thing I'm supposed to be doing. And realizing that it's actually the recognition of where I'm meant to be. Okay, I'm riding the wave of difficulty, and that's actually the nice part. And it becomes like an exciting thing I get to do, as opposed to a panic and go and do something else again, because it's just super stupid to jump off the wave as soon as you start catching one. As an analogy, it makes lots of sense. Doing it, not so easy, but I like the analogy anyway.
I think it's a great analogy. The other thing that I use when you talk about stuff like that, when you're challenging yourself, is that discomfort is growth trying to happen.
Nice.
Discomfort is growth trying to happen. It's literally trying to happen and work through you. And then even to go a little further with your surfing metaphor, it's called edge surfing. If you've ever heard edge surfing, you're surfing the feelings of like, ooh, I'm riding it. I'm edge surfing.
That's what I said, though I'd never been told it, but apparently right at the same thing.
You're basically saying edge surfing, and you're actually surfing and pushing through that discomfort, but you're edge surfing, right? Like you're on the outskirts of that.
You're pulled between two states of like, do I stay here or do I go and do the other thing? Just like the actual wave is just the molecules are being bashed into each other. And you're like, okay, I'm going to ride this edge of discomfort and stay here.
You basically just described a clinical term of edge surfing that you've been doing yourself to challenge your own nervous system. Yeah. And graceful is hard because it's messy. We talk about healing or becoming stronger and more resilient and growing and becoming the best version of ourselves, pushing through our fears. And sometimes it does look messy. And the grace comes from the relationship that you have to yourself while you are engaging in the discomfort, while you are engaging in the difficult thing. What is your relationship to what you're doing? If you're judging it and being like, God, why is this so hard for me? Why am I doing this? I'm so uncomfortable. Then judgment comes in. Then you're judging that you're uncomfortable. Why can't I just do this? Why is this so hard? Oh God, I just want to give up. So the relationship to the fear, the relationship to the discomfort. And then we talk a lot about compassion, being really compassionate with yourself. And a lot of people are hard on themselves because they have this inner critic. I expect more. I demand more from myself. I should be better. I shouldn't be feeling this. It's like you're human. You're meant to feel some of these difficult things when you're challenging yourself to do something new. You're navigating uncharted territory. There's a humanness about you that you're going to be experiencing. Having grace means having compassion. And people are like, I can have compassion for everybody that I care about in my life. But for some reason, when it comes to me, I beat myself up. I'm mad at myself. Why couldn't I do that? Why did I give up before the finish line? Or why didn't I push through that discomfort? Or why did I avoid? And why did I run away? And I missed an opportunity. So what I ask people to do is to think about somebody that they love. It could be an animal that they feel unconditional, positive self-regard for, which means compassion. Somebody they love that if they came to you and said, I'm really scared, or I'm terrified, or I keep pushing, I want to get here and it's so hard because it's like my nervous system is recognizing it as a threat because it's like new behavior and it's new activity and I'm in this land of uncertainty and my nervous system doesn't like uncertainty. It wants to neatly put everything into a box and know if I do A and B, it's going to equal C. I say totally committed, but fully unattached, not detached. I go unattached.
Yeah, exactly. It's that kind of duality of opposites that actually really complement each other.
Yeah.
It's definitely, when I say graceful, it's like, it's not about being perfect at things and just sort of acing your exams without thinking about them. It's about kind of accepting yourself and not fighting against yourself.
Yes.
On this point, something that's been helping me side quest less and stay more focused is what I drink in the morning, which does have a neuroscience element. If I load up on too much coffee, I just get the jitters, which makes my ADHD worse and everything worse. But matcha green tea with the balance of L-theanine and caffeine hits the spot 10 times better. And there's a ton of research behind it. And there's even been a global shortage of it lately. However, my preferred option now is to take a Magic Mind shot because their formula has a bunch of extra proven goodies like lion's mane, mushroom, bacopa, ashwagandha, turmeric, B vitamins, etc. It's labeled the world's first mental performance shot. And not only does it give you a huge amount of clarity, it also tastes pretty great, which is a good achievement considering the ingredients. So thanks for Magic Mind helping me keep my stuff together and sponsoring this episode. I would 100% recommend Magic Mind in your day-to-day life if you are like me when it comes to juggling your attention and you want something that provides a more natural and gentle, calm energy, they are also offering a sweet 50% discount that you can grab in the episode description or by going to magicmind.com/growth/growth-edu with code GROWTH50. They are very confident about what they've built, and thus they have a 100-day full refund guarantee with no questions asked. That's even if you drink all the shots, so zero risk. 50% off at Magic Mind using the link in the description or code GROWTH50. Back to the show.
Acceptance, I always say this, acceptance is the answer to all of my problems. Anytime I'm disturbed, it's because a person, a place, a situation, a state of mind, a feeling, an event feels unacceptable to me in that moment. Until I can accept it exactly as it is in that moment, I can never truly find peace or surrender. So accepting it as if you chose this moment, whatever it is that happens. Like I chose this moment while it's happening.
Definitely. People are so good in retrospect. Ask them about 5 years ago, they'd never change anything because it teaches them so much. And then in the moment, they'll be fighting everything. And you're like, well, in 5 years' time, you're going to look back at this and be like, this was the best thing this should have never been anything different. And yet in a moment, they're like, no, I can't have this.
Sam, you make such a great point. People, some of my greatest tragedies, my biggest heartbreaks have been in friendships. And I remember being like, I could do without this lesson. Because I always try to look at, there is a lesson in this. What is this teaching me as opposed to why is this happening to me or why am I experiencing this? I remember being in the pain during some of the most painful breakups or some of the most painful endings of friendships that I thought were going to be lifelong, heartbroken, right? Because I'm human and feeling like I could do without this lesson. When I tell you, it is what has made me the strongest, most confident version of myself today because I was able to navigate. I had no idea how to navigate those difficult times, right? At one point, I had lost 3 best friends at the same time. They were like my support system. They were my family. I was a maid of honor in one of their weddings. I got notarized and married another one. And it just all fell apart at one point. And I remember I was asking the universe to give me more confidence. It was something I wanted, like give me more confidence to stand in self and to feel. And all of a sudden it was like, I understand now that those needed to end in order for me to grow. And I was like, I could do without this lesson. This is so painful. So it's almost like if the universe was giving me what I wanted, this is how you're going to get confident. You're going to charter these uncharted territories on your own as a soldier, and you're going to figure it out. And on the other side, I got confidence. But God, was it painful. And I remember being so heartbroken that I was lost at sea because I felt that these people were my anchors. And what I didn't realize was that I was in these codependent relationships with them where I depended on them. I literally felt in hindsight, when you're able to kind of zoom out, I almost felt like I was the table and they were the 3 legs that were holding me up. I didn't even know that while I was in it. And I was so dependent on that. When I didn't have that any longer, I got to rely on me, my faith. Everybody has a different understanding, whether they're spiritual, they believe in a higher power, they believe in the universe. The fact that I did that on my own is what gave me I don't think I would have gotten it any other way. I really don't think I would have gotten it any other way. And I understand why. And after all of that happened, I actually reconnected back with one of them. And it was from a healthier place. And we kind of sort of shared our journey of our time apart and all the growth that both of us had done. And it was meant to break apart so I could elevate for me.
Yeah, sometimes we need the space.
And that's what happens, I think, is that when you start to grow, people fall away from you.
Yeah, definitely will.
And it's not that it's your dream for that to happen, but it's like Gabor Mate talks about we attract people at the same level of psychological wounding as ourselves. And then when we get better and we heal and we elevate, they usually fall off because we are no longer in alignment. Like water seeks its own level. And we're no longer in alignment with that person, the relational dynamic has shifted. I think what happened was I became more confident, which made me speak my truth more. I became less of a people pleaser. And now I'm changing the dynamic on the person that's in a relationship with me. And they're like, whoa. And so I always say I gave them the wrong map to my heart. They thought I was okay with that. But now that I was speaking my truth, I don't blame them. They're so used to 10 years of that dynamic, and I'm switching it on them because I'm growing. It's going to take them a little while to understand either they grow and meet me where I'm at, or they fall off, or eventually, like the other girl, we came back together because we had kind of traveled these separate roads of our own self-development and our own self-growth, and then came back and were able to understand that that was necessary so that we became back in connection in a healthier way.
I agree with your statement of like, not always true, is that I definitely could highlight some friendships where I'm like, I don't think I was ever at the same level, but it sort of worked and just randomly fallen off.
Yeah, sometimes you just have a connection and sometimes it falls off. I always say everything is nuanced. Never take anything as one blanket statement.
Yeah, but I can definitely look at some relationships that are like perfectly described by everything you just said there, of friends I've seen or people I've also had relationships with where I'm like, yeah, that's about where we were at in lots of ways. And yeah, you definitely see people as they do level up in some form of maturity when it comes to like drugs or other stuff, where like they don't have the same reason to hang out with the friends, but then the friend then gets annoyed by the fact that the person is leveling up and then like rejects them, as opposed to just being like, okay, I'm not going to see you quite as much. So they suddenly don't see each other at all. It like snaps out and this.
Yeah. But sometimes when you're doing something or you're growing or you're elevating or you're making choices and changes, it reminds them of what they're not doing.
Yeah, exactly.
And then it makes them feel bad about themselves. Some of this is conscious. Some of this is subconscious. They don't know why, but they don't feel good. The second part of that is they fall off. There's different reasons. It's nuance. It's not a blanket statement. They may feel like, this person is doing these things. Who do they think that they are? I kind of want to do those things and I'm not doing them. And it's reminding me of either my lack of action, my feelings of inadequacy, or my feelings of like, I'm not pushing through my fear. This person is. It's reminding me of what I'm not doing.
Yeah. And back into the nuances of actually a perfect fixed mindset of, because growth mindset, you should be happy for anyone that can inspire you that's doing well. But we all think we have a growth mindset and then there's just so many ways that we don't.
Yeah, right. Our emotional roadblocks. A lot of times what I find is that it comes down to shame. We all have a part that carries shame. And people are like, I'm not ashamed. I'm not ashamed. I accept, and it's like, shame is this idea of somebody witnessing your inherent wrongness or badness or inadequacy or not good enoughness. People are like, shame, it's not that big. It's not this huge, like, it's like everybody has a certain level of embedded shame. Like no matter what, we collect it it's contagious. We take on other people's shame. We internalize other people's shame, other people's messages along the way. And so there's this embedded shame in us. Some of it's not even ours. But our body is, again, storing that as this internalized shame. And so there is this part of us that is holding this shame. Carl Jung calls it our shadow part, this part that we don't want the world to know. If they knew I was anxious, if they knew I didn't feel good enough, if they knew that I was fearful, they would not accept me, or I would be rejected, or I would lose connection, or I wouldn't appear. And the thing is, making friends with that part and bringing it to the forefront and being like, okay, so I'm holding some shame. When you unburden shame and you have what's called an excavation of shame.
We're having a short pause now to talk about the advertisers that keep the show running, and we'll be back in a jiffy. Yeah, one thing I was thinking whilst you were talking was you spoke about Glimmers before we started the show. As I was thinking through my own thoughts that made me like happy where I felt good, I felt a lot more deeper appreciation for them, kind of related to the glimmer side of concept. And I just wondered if building in a greater gratitude and appreciation for your life as a habit makes you more resistant to falling into moments of panic.
Absolutely. I mean, literally, gratitude is the ultimate state of receiving, and gratitude trumps fear. And so the more grateful that you are for what you have in that moment, So if we're in the past, we're anxious. If we're in the past, we're usually depressed. I'm sorry. And if we're in the future, we're usually anxious, right? We're anticipating. And so the more present that we are, that we can recall these. And so Deb Dana, who works with Steve Porges, one of my teachers, and, the concept of polyvagal theory, talks about these glimmers and anchors, right? And her book is called Anchored. And so these glimmers are these little moments in time. They can be extended moments in time where you feel a sense of awe or a sense of gratitude, and you get to bring that in, And so, like, I'll give you a glimmer. I was in Tulum, Mexico. I got a Mayan clay mud massage outside in a tent. There was got to be something special, magical in that mud. I'm telling you. And they're rubbing it in the heat. It's in the evening. The stars are above the sky. And then you go into a private shower outdoors and you wash the mud off. And I see the moon above me and the stars above me. And the shower is warm and it's private and it's outdoors. And I just feel complete awe and peace and gratitude for that. What a magical experience that I'm feeling right now in this moment. That was a glimmer for me. And I still can recall it. And so to bring that in, right? Another one was I was doing an ATV through a desert. And I was, in Morocco. It was on my bucket list. And and it was Agafay Desert. And it was a 2-hour ride in the desert. And I was just riding. And I felt complete awe at the vastness of this desert. And the fact that I had the ability to be able to be in this place, on this, doing this, having this experience, that I felt totally present in that moment and totally engaged. I'm like, out of all the paths that you should take in this life, one should be through a desert. There was something really awe-inspiring. There's camel there. There is just, the sun is setting. I was in awe. I was in absolute awe. That's another glimmer. A glimmer can be a moment that you took at the beach. Maybe you watched the sunset in Naples, Florida, and the way that the sun sets over there on that coast, you can see the ocean taking it in. It's almost like the ocean is eating as the sun is setting. Another glimmer. I'm just looking at that I'm like, wow, that is just pure magic. Look at Mother Nature. Look at the way that all of this kind of just happens and how gorgeous that is. Another glimmer is a connection where I had a deep conversation with my friend where we were laughing and joking about something. And I felt, really just connected to her in that moment and just felt really seen and heard and understood. And we were laughing. And that's another glimmer, and these glimmers, you have these glimmers. And then the anchors are people that are anchors in your life. Remember I told you when I felt lost at sea, lost that whole, but who anchors you into the present moment? Who anchors you in your life? Who is somebody whose nervous system relaxes your nervous system, who makes you feel like you're not alone, who you can have these conversations with where you feel connected to them and they're kind of anchor you. We're wired for connection. No man is an island. So we want to be able to learn how to live interdependently, right? To be able to connect with people interdependently. And so again, coming back to totally committed to everything I do and everyone that's in my life, but like unattached in the way in which if at any moment it falls apart or not that I'm okay with it, but the methodology is I'm kind of okay with whatever happens. Doesn't mean that I'm not going to get upset about it. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to have a moment of dysregulation. But what I used to have where I would stay in dysregulation and obsess and ruminate about something that didn't go my way for a very long time is now a 24-hour period, a 48 period, which is like huge. And so people always think, it's not a quick fix. You're just constantly growing and evolving and changing and just becoming a better version of yourself. The certainties are, for all of us, is always doing the work, right? And whatever that work means. And the work doesn't need to be this insurmountable task. It's like maintenance. You don't put gas in your car, it's going to break down. So doing whatever the work is for yourself. Maybe the work for you is just sitting still and not reading any more books. Not just you, but anyone. Maybe the work for somebody is to learn to just sit still more and to just be with a sensation and be with a feeling and understand that the fear of that feeling is more scary than actually being with it for a little while. And then, pain, which means we're going to experience to some degree, some form of pain that's going to hurt us that we didn't expect that to happen. I would have preferred that didn't happen. And uncertainty. How do we navigate that? The thing is that it's uncertain for everybody. So we're all in the same boat. Things are uncertain for everybody. And so it's like people are like, oh, but I need certainty. I'm like, but it's uncertain for everybody. And I hate to use this. I'm not trying to be gloom or doom, but like people are married 35 years. The guy gets up and leaves, talk about uncertainty, right? And so if you get okay with that, you're always doing the work, which is whatever it is that it is for you, improving yourself, becoming a better version of yourself, learning how to work smarter, not harder, edge surfing, continuing to grow. Maybe your work is to sit still. Maybe your work is to work less. Maybe everyone's is different, identifying what it is for you. And this idea of uncertainty. How do I get okay with the fact that everybody's in the same boat, that we are all uncertain? And if I can get okay with that, what is my relationship to uncertainty?
Definitely. For me, I've been working a lot lately on not feeling the rush to do something. I'll start the morning with like yoga, and either I'll be planning or I won't be doing anything. And it's nice to not like rush it. Okay, I'll check my email and do all these other things. And I just banned myself from all the things that I would just normally go to. And I'm like, okay, well, if I'm not writing, then I'm not doing anything. And not doing anything is fine. It's just being slow about things. And it's just definitely helped me feel a bit deeper on everything.
Yeah. And that sense of urgency is usually our our anxious part talking.
100%. One thing that when you were talking about all your glimmers, I related to them a lot. And it was very interesting to think that everything you mentioned were all experiences. And none of them were like, oh, I bought this iPhone and I was so happy. Just a useful reminder to anyone that...
Oh God, shopping was like a huge thing for me, like for a while. And I'm not sitting here saying I don't shop anymore. I've always been into fashion, but all of these things were, again, shopping is a protector. I would find myself when I was upset or distressed or whatever, I would just take off and go to these boutiques on my own. I have a friend who's a thrifter. She literally will just thrift all day long. And it's an escape for me. I don't think about anything else except the acquisition of material goods during that period of time, and then I get unnecessary things or whatever. So yeah, we talk a lot about the true moments of joy and growth and all of that is not in the shopping, is not in the workaholism, starting my own businesses and companies. I've fallen prey to, when you're a one-man show at certain times, to, kind of do everything. Everything has a sense of urgency. If I don't do it, it's not going to get done. And I was like, wait a minute, like if I keep overriding my nervous system like that and I'm not enjoying the ride, I call it arrival fallacy. If I get here, when I get here, I'll be happy. I'll calm down and I won't work as hard the joy is in the journey. And like, I mean that, like really like enjoying the journey, because arrival fallacy means that you're not going to get what you think you're going to get when you get to whatever goal that it is, because there's going to be another one and then another one and then another
100%.
one. Right?
And like life is the journey, it's not the destination the whole time.
And really understanding what that statement means. We hear all these quotes and euphemisms, but like what they really mean is like being present in what you're doing and getting the gratification of the little things that are not so little that you're accomplishing, even when you're not, where you think that you should be or where you want to be. Because I promise you, if you can't cultivate joy and appreciation in these parts of the journey, you won't feel it when you get there.
Yeah, definitely. It's a hard one to teach people, but it's like a muscle or something. And if you don't learn how to have joy, if you work and sacrifice everything for 10 years to then, even if you end up with some millions or whatever, you just sit there, but you don't know how to be happy because you have to be constantly doing things because you're just wired yourself to be stressed.
Exactly. And the thing is that some people are so used to being in the sympathetic part of their nervous system, right? We have two parts of our nervous system, the sympathetic, which is the go, 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 do, do, do. We need it. And then the parasympathetic is rest and digest, right? It's like when you eat a good meal or right before you're going to sleep and you're relaxed, maybe you're watching a show. And we want to alternate between those two. And when we live in sympathetic, we're go, 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 do, 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 do. It's like we're on this bicycle and we're not stepping off of it for a second because we're afraid we're going to lose momentum. And so I'm saying step off, have the glimmer, have the sifting, do the traumatic induction, pause. You can always get back onto the bike. You will not lose the momentum like you think that you will.
All right. We've had Esin Pinarli on the show, founder of Eternal Wellness Counseling, expert in CBT, DBT, imago, and brain spotting therapies. Thank you for joining us. That was a filled episode. And because there was so much, I'm going to hit you with my biggest take-homes. But I'll do that in a second. First, if you want to hear more from Esin, links are in the description to find her. And we recorded a second part to this episode for premium listeners only, where we cover the topics of internal family systems and how you create these different parts inside you with different roles. And that really carries on much where we left off on the topic of everyone having different parts and conflicting needs inside of them. We also spoke about the technique of brain spotting, which is really cool, and it's considered a less invasive version of EMDR therapy, but often has similar results, can be much faster than talking therapy, and can work on some of the things that sometimes can't get solved by talking therapy and much faster. And we discuss some of the really cool science behind it and the practicalities of how it works. We also covered the issues of seeking reasons for our problems as opposed to overcoming them, which seems to be both a timeless and growing problem these days. And we also cover a few questions about co-regulation techniques and polyvagal theory. So if you want to hear that, you can go ad-free and listen to premium episodes with our premium membership on Supercast by following the link in the description or going to growthmindset.supercast.com. Memberships start from just $1 because I'm nice, and so there's no reason for you not to. And if you're feeling flush, you can join the book club and geek out with me for $5. And on the topic of geeking out, what are my take-homes? Well, Esin had a lot of great phrases, right? Classic, if you get hysterical, it's historical. Things like the fear of fear is larger than the fear itself. The whole conversation around when we go through bad times and difficult moments, we might be thinking, I could really do without this lesson right now. But of course, in hindsight, it might be the best thing that ever happened to you and could even be happening for you. The topic of the concept of we attract people with the same psychological wounding as ourselves. That is a deep one, eh? We always jump to find the problems with our partners, but maybe there's a lot more going on inside of us that we haven't addressed. Some other cool ideas: working out creates hope molecules. You can't outthink your fear. Change begins with physical change before it ever becomes psychological change, such as animals shaking out their trauma, and so should you. Then titrate yourself to do the hard thing. It's about expanding your window of comfort, not breaking it. And of course, edge surfing, the concept of riding that feeling of discomfort that in that very moment is actually giving you the practice of growth that you are seeking. Finally, the big one of we all have embedded shame within us. Often not even our own shame. We often seek to dismiss the idea of shame because we often don't see it, but its slippery tentacles usually lie hidden behind every single block or difficulty you have in your life, and we need to acknowledge that shame exists within us and we all have it. Right, man, that was a packed episode. If you are interested to find out more about these concepts, if you're a new listener, we have some great episodes in the archives on the psychology and neuroscience of fear. I did an episode on polyvagal theory with Stephen Porges himself, the creator of it. I also did an episode on attachment theory with Esin's colleague Jessica Baum, who wrote the book Anxiously Attached. So they are honestly all worth a listen. And I'm very proud of the fact that I get to explore these things and create this sort of content. Right. On the subject of me creating content, I have mentioned recently that I'm creating a workshop for building certainty in our lives during uncertain times, and generally playing longer term games, being less lost in the news cycle and instead on top of your own life cycle. After all, you only have one life. Well, I've been having some big ideas around this, so thanks for everyone's input so far. And some progress and some further ideas are looking at ways to help you become a more polymathic thinker and the psychology of learning faster, learning deeper, as, of course, the future is going to be about rapid change and flexible skills rather than static ways of working. So if any of that interests you, I have a super short 2-question feedback form that will get you early access to the workshop and 50% off as a thanks for filling it in. The link is in the description if you want to help me out. Now, finally, as we did cover in the episode, life really is a one-time shot. You don't want to wait around before you ever do those things that you keep promising yourself you will, but somehow put off until you've hit that goal or until you're ready next year, etc. In fact, even work can be a form of procrastination. So remember, life is for living, not for waiting. So go and live it. Thank you so much for listening.
Go you!
Your consistency to reach the end of an episode is legendary.
My hero!
If you have any ideas or feedback for the show, I'm always interested to hear from you.
You're the best!
Studies show we need time for information to sink in, so I'm going to give you a 5-second pause, silence, to reflect on one idea from the show before you jump back into your busy life. Ready and go.